Hello friends, in today's session we're going to discuss about constructor. Constructors and destructors. We'll be discussing firstly what is the role of constructor in C and what is C++ and what is the role of destructors in C++, right? First of all, let us understand what is constructor. As we know that whenever we define a class, we understand one point that class is a encapsulation. Class is a wrapping of private data and public functionalities together. Now, whenever the terminology comes up of private data, it means we cannot initialize, or rather we cannot refer the private data by using object reference. We need to understand this thing firstly very clearly. Means class name, and it is having a private data. Right? Whatever the type of data you have. Now this private data means we need to ask one question to ourselves. Just like in case of structure-oriented programming, we declare the variable and initialize the value there and there only. For example, if you are a C programmer or structure-oriented programmer, we can declare a value anywhere else and initialize it. But can we declare and initialize the values over here in the class, provided A is a private data? So then the answer is no, because why you will not able to initialize the private data belongs to class? The reason is class is a prototype. Class is a grammar, and object have a physical shape. Object have a memory. Object have its own copy. Right? Means like class is a logical entity. We capsulate the data and its related functionalities together as a prototype. For example, whenever you say, just for the sake of understanding, you say whenever we are saying int, then int just consider as a class. Then what properties get? We know that int is a data type. Just assume there is a int as a class. Then what properties it have? It occupies 2 bytes of memory. The range will be assigned to it, that is minus 3276 at 32,768 to positive 30,767 to minus 3276. So these properties by default will be assigned to integer, and whenever we'll say int a, then a become an object of integer class. I'm not saying integer is a class available, it's a data type. I'm just giving an example. Means before declaring a variable of integer type in the library, somebody had already written the prototype, the grammar of integer, that whenever a variable of integer type get declared, 2 bytes of memory will be allocated. This is the range of it, and whichever the variable declared of integer type will get that all the properties and behaviors. Hope you understand it now. So in the similar manner, means whenever integer get defined, that time the value of integer was not initialized. In the similar manner, whenever you are writing a class, let us understand you are developing an arithmetic class. So in the arithmetic class, to perform any arithmetics, you need 2 numbers. But these 2 numbers values, while writing arithmetic class, you may have the 2 numbers integer a, b, and then the definitions of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But can you able to initialize the private data a equals to 5, b equals to 7? If you did it, what will happen? Whenever you perform summation, addition, subtraction, every time it will give the same answer. And probably user will not like this library. As I said, class is a library, class is a prototype which user have to use. It's a user defined data type. So if you initialize the private data belongs to arithmetic class, then user will not get a chance to input his own values, and he or she may not want to use that arithmetic library defined by you. Why one will use the arithmetic library? Because he want to perform arithmetics with his own data, and if it is already initialized, it means it will perform the operations with the default values, and this is not the feasible solution. And hence class is a collection of private data, non-initialized private data, one can say, and then the member functions. Right? Now, private data belongs to class. We are not supposed to initialize. Second, private data belongs to class will not be accessible to the object, because object have a scope outside the class definition. So object dot property, object dot member is not possible, because we have to refer it from the to provide the data security, we have to refer from the member functions. It should not be directly accessible. And if you define the data member in public section, then it is accessible, but it is violation of norms of object-oriented programming. The reason is you will lack the data security because of the public accession. Just need to understand one question: why we write a class? Why we define a private data? The reason is we want to achieve the data security. And if you want to achieve the data security, data has to be in the private section. If you define in the public section and accessing by the object reference, it means you are lacking the data security. Means compulsory we need to keep the data in the private section, and that to uninitialized data. No uninitialized data means no values data, and then the functionalities to be defined. For example, here is a class arithmetic, and I want to perform arithmetics with the 2 numbers, so I will declare the 2 private data, and I don't know the values of it. and then I'll go with the all functionalities like add, likewise all the functionalities I will define. Now A and B don't have any values, right? While defining a arith class or arithmetic class, you can't initialize the values, because if you initialize the values in the functionalities, every time whenever you run the code, the same values, same additions, subtractions, answers, you will get it. So while defining prototype, you cannot initialize the values, right? So if you give a call to the functionality, here in this case return A plus B, so A and B don't have any value, so what value it will return? The null value. So in such situations, up till now what we did, before giving call to the functionalities, to initialize the private data, we have to write, we up till now write a functionality called as get data, right? Maybe the parameterized one or default one. We define the functionality and then give a call from the main. We read the data and pass on the values, and then we initialize it. Now, means to initialize the values, we need to define the member function, right? And as you know, what is the application of function? To process the data. And what is the utility of get data functions you wrote? To initialize the data. Initializing data should not be the functionality of function. Processing data should be the functionality of it. And at the same time, whenever you create the object, its copy will be initialized. Its copy has to be initialized. And hence, we need to write a function in a class by the name of class name. If you write a function by the name of class name, and the purpose of it's to initialize the private data belongs to class, it is called as a constructor. What is constructor? Constructor is a member function which is having same name as a class name. Constructor is a member function having same name as a class name, and its purpose to initialize the private data belongs to class. Hope you're getting me now. Means if we have a private data belongs to class, we have to write the public functionalities like a get data or any other user defined functions, and you have to explicitly call that, create the object, and whenever the object will be created, that time it don't have any values, and then object dot get data to initialize the values. Our point of discussion is, whenever you create the object, at that time only the properties belongs to class, the private data belongs to class need to be initialized. And for that reason, you have to write a member function with the same name as a class name. Instead of writing get data, whatever the class name, if you define the functionalities by the same name as a class name, it become a constructor. Constructor is useful for initializing the private data belongs to class, right? Because before processing, because if you refer to the class arithmetic, the function arithmetic is a constructor, and then addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, these are the functionalities, because I have to initialize the data firstly of the two variables, and then I will be performing addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and all. So the first thing we need to learn, that is, what is constructor? Constructor is a class member function with the same name as the class name. As we just recently discussed, whenever you are trying to define a constructor, then a member function having a same name as a class name, and why we are writing the function? To initialize the private data belongs to class. Just understand one thing. Whenever you are writing a class, it means you are declaring only the private data, but you are not supposed to initialize it. What will happen if you can initialize it? It will give the, means whenever you run the code, it will give the common output. User will not get a chance to, because class is a prototype, class is a grammar, right? And we need to create an object. Object have a physical shape. Just understand the difference between the like class and object. Class is a logical and object is a physical. For just sake of understanding, whenever human takes birth on this earth, whenever human takes birth on this earth, so let us understand class human, and then human man, human woman. So man and woman are the objects. So that man will have all the properties, that woman have all the properties, but don't have name, age, address, and all. And every object having its own respective copy of it. So whenever object will be generated, its copy has to be initialized like a name, age, and all, address and all. So for that reason, you need to write a constructor. So constructor is a member function having same name as a class name. Point number one. Second, a constructor is a member function of a class which initializes object of the class. Its purpose is to initialize the objects. Initialize the object in the sense, initialize the copy of object. As I said, whenever you create the object of a human class, that man and woman will get the name, age, address, and all. And the default properties will get initialized. So at the time of developing human class, these things cannot be initialized. Hope you are getting me now, right? So it's a structure. It's a logical part. It was defined while means like how human will behave, how man, what properties man and woman should have, and what is their role. That has to be defined as a prototype while defining class. But whenever you create an instance, whenever you create the object, then that properties will initialize, and accordingly by using that properties, that man and woman will behave in a real world. Hope you understand it. So a constructor is a member function of a class which initializes objects of a class, right? The main job of constructor is to allocate the memory to class object, right? As I said, class is logical, right? And object is physical. Object got the memory. Object got its properties and behaviors. Object can be we can identify it. So object is a variable of user defined type. Class is a prototype of user defined type. Class is a grammar. Object is a physical entity, right? and constructor will automatically call when the object is created. This is important, right? Whenever you construct object human man, right? So that man, human, woman, that man and woman should get the look and feel of like a human. Man won't look like a plant, right? So these all the objects of the man and the woman get initialized whenever you create the object of a human class. Hope you understand it. So what we understand through this, whenever we are writing a class, we have to wrap the private data. We cannot initialize the private data at the time of declaration private in the class. And to initialize this private data, we can't define the member functions. Up till now we define the member functions, but if you define the member function, it has to be we have to create the object with no values and then give a call to the member functions to initialize the private data. Instead, whenever you create the object, means like, just understand, if you are writing a member function, means human man, that man is not live now, and then man dot get data, and then, so this is not the case. Whenever this is not the proper way of instantiations. Whenever object generated, it should get the default values. So whenever arithmetic et is an object, so that object will get that all the rights to initialize its values and perform all the functionalities. So constructor is a member function having same name as a class name, and as it is having a same name as a class name, it got the ability to invoke automatically. The last point, constructor is automatically called. Means whenever you say arithmetic at human man, the constructor calls, right? And why it is called automatically? The reason is it is having the same name as a class name. So whenever you create the object of a class, automatically constructor get a calls. What is constructor? Constructor is a member function having same name as a class name, and it invokes automatically at the time of object creation, right? Let us write the definition of it. What is constructor? It's a member function having same name as a class name, invokes called automatically at the time of object creation. It invokes and called automatically at the time of object creation, right? And then now types of constructor. We discuss about what is constructor, the purpose of defining constructor. Now what are the types of constructor? First type of constructor is default. Default means a constructor without any parameters, right? Whenever the object because like whenever a man generates or a woman generates default values, what default values will be get initialized? It means every human body have a 2 hands, 2 legs, 1 nose, 2 eyes, sort of. So that are the default values get initialized. And second is parameterized. Parameterized means with the every individual object have a different name, age, address, and city and all. So that is parameterized one, right? And the copy constructor means if you want to assign the already existed objects copy to the new one, then it become a copy constructor. Just like to understand what is the copy constructor will work. Here in this case, like just understand int a. This is, it will get the default values. Then whenever you say int a equals to 5, This is parameterized one, just for the sake of understanding, right? And then int b equals to a is a copy constructor. So int a will get the default values, right? We'll get initialized to garbage value and then 2 bytes of memory and the range and all these stuffs. We get to get it. But whenever you say int equal to 5, it's a parameters now. The value of a become 5. Here the value of a don't have any values. And then int b equals to means the exist copy of a will be assigned to the b. So it become a parameterized one. Just for the sake of understanding, I know that integer is not a class and a is not an object, but just to understand what is the difference between right now. Okay, whenever we develop a code, the things will be much more clear. So this is the default, means no values, no arguments. No arguments. So the whenever you create the object, this constructor will be get called automatically, and it will initialize the data with no values. And in the parameterized, okay, whenever you give a call, whatever the arguments you pass on, by that arguments the private data belongs to class will be initialized. And copy constructor means if you already have an object, and that object's copy if you can pass on to the current one, then it become a copy constructor. Let us understand, because this is the theoretical discussions we did. Let us understand by a good program over there. I always believe good demonstrative code will give you all the details, all the idea will be much more clear. So my motivation is, my suggestion is, just develop a demonstrative code, whatever the concepts and whatever the understanding and the theoretical stuffs you discussed or you learn, right? Okay, let's go for it then. Demonstrating constructor. Here we got a demo of iostream.h, iomani.h, and the conio.h. As we are writing a bottom to top programming approach, okay, we are not supposed to define the man, so we'll keep it at the bottom. I'll be demonstrating these constructors and later on destructor also by giving a reference of by defining arithmetic class over there. Make it very simple firstly, and then we'll go for the more programs on it. So we got the class arithmetic. After that, we'll define the private data belongs to class, that is int a comma b. As I said, we are not supposed to initialize this private data there and there only at a time of declarations. If you initialize it, then it will work with the default values. So I will just declare the two private data. The reason is, for performing arithmetics, at least we need the two integers, right? And then we define the functionalities like integer add, okay, and let's say return a plus b, integer subtract, and return a minus b, integer multiply, and return a into b, integer divide, return a divided by b. I'm trying to explain the concept, so I'll take a simple example firstly. So these are the functionalities to perform the arithmetics with the given two numbers. But where are the given two numbers? We don't have. So here, up till now we write the functionality like a get data and all. But if you write the functionality like get data to initialize this private data, we have to create the object and then no, that is wrong. Whenever you create the objects, automatically it has to invoke. That is considered. So for that reason, you have to define a function with the same name as a class name, right? So a equals to 0, b equals to 0, and constructor, there are types of constructor as we discussed. Default one, so constructor without any arguments called as default constructor. And constructor with arguments, it's called as parameterized constructor. Here this constructor will take the arguments from the user, and by that inputs, by that arguments, the copy of private data will be initialized. And then we have a copy of a copy constructor. What is copy constructor? The exist copy of an object, let's say arith, and then we have a, as an argument we have a object of arith, and then a equals to e dot a and b equals to e dot b. So the exist object copy will be passed on. Exist objects copy will be passed on. Means like there is a, if there is a already exists the copy of arithmetic object, arithmetic 80, 10, 15, and arithmetic p equals to p in the bracket 80. I'll just explain you later on. So right now, just don't focus on the copy constructor. Copy constructor means that, as I just give the example, if the object is already exist and it exists copy you want to assign to the new one, then it is a example of a copy constructor, right? So here I declare a class arith. I'm having a private data, then I write three constructors: default one, parameterized one, and the copy constructor. Copy constructor means, the purpose of copy constructor, if you want to copy the, because constructor is used to construct the object. Constructor is used to construct the object. So there are three ways of object constructions. One, you create a brand new object without any parameters, default one. You create the object with the extra arguments, parameterize. And if you want to construct the object but with the exist copy of an object, then a copy constructor. So in this manner, you have to define all these constructors, right? And then you go to the main. And then if you define arith 80, that's it. Means whenever you create the object. So whenever you create the object, there is no point now 80.getData and all. Automatically, it gives a call to the default construction. It gives a call to default constructor. That's why that is what that keyword called as automatic. It invokes automatically at the time of object creation. Whenever you create the objects, it invokes automatically. So arithmetic 80, it invokes automatically this, as we don't pass on any parameters. So the value of a will become 0 and b will become 0. Initially it was don't have any values. Now we initialize to 0 0. So, and if you want to initialize with the parameterized one, right? So you can call it like this: arith 80 in the bracket 10 comma 15. So now this time it gives a call to this parameterized constructor, and the value of 10 will be passed on to x, value of 15 will be passed on to y, and then the private data will be get initialized, and the private data will be get initialized. This is called as parameterized constructor, like call to the parameterized constructor, and this type of call is called as implicit call. The parameterized constructor can be invoked like this also: arith 80 in the equal to, and then you give a call to arith and pass on 10 comma 15. In this way also you can give a call to the parameterized constructor, and this is called as explicit call. In case of parameterized constructor, you can call it, refer it by the two ways. One is arith 80 in the bracket, means there and there only you can specify the your call to the parameterized constructor, and then arith 80 equals to, and then the constructor invokes over there. Just try and understand one thing, just to revise the thing. Constructor is a member function having the same name as a class name. Second, constructor is defined for initializing the private data. So constructor without argument called as default constructor, constructor with argument called as parameterized constructor, and constructor with argument as an object is called as copy constructor, because copy constructor's purpose is to copy the exist object's copy to the current one, right? So these are the things are there. And if you are constructing another object, like let's say arith pq, let's say another object you are constructing, but now this time you want to initialize the copy of exist object to it, so it's a copy constructor. And in this manner you can construct the objects. You constructed here two objects, AT and PQ. So let us understand. Now if you give a call to cout addition arithmetics with AT object, addition at AT dot add, subtraction multiplication division. So this is the arithmetics with the AT object, and if you perform the arithmetics with the PQ object, the same result you will get it, because you the copy of AT will be passed on to PQ. So instead of AT, if you give a call to PQ, the same result you will get it. Okay, you can make a comment over here: arithmetics with AT object. And you can print PQ object. Okay, so what we write in the code, we define a class arith. We got a two private data a comma b. We got public functionalities. Here is the constructor defined arith with the default constructor, parameterized constructor, and the copy constructor. Here, whenever you, how the copy constructor will get a call, arith PQ, and the AT copy, the copy of AT will be passed on as an argument to E, right? And AT dot A, that is 10, will be passed on to A, and AT dot B. Now E is a reference of AT, right? AT is an object which is having scope in a main, which is not having a scope in a class definition. So whenever you pass on an argument of AT, E will hold the reference of it, and then its copy will be initialized like this. Hope you understand it. So just try to run this code now. I will define it as a construct one.cpp and open it from the compiler. To appear, so we will reload it again. Yeah, here it is, construct, and just try to run it. There are some errors. Okay, arith 80. You just check it out what that error is. I understand till. Okay, is not allowed. Okay, fine enough. We'll go with the, I'll explain you why I'm using this reference. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Now arithmetic with AT object, addition 25, right? Subtraction -5, multiplication, division, the same you will get it in the with the PQ object as well. Now means we successfully able to demo run the code over there. Now get back to the actual code. Here, as I said, whenever you create the object, okay, you pass on the object. Here you need to create the reference of it, so we have to use address reference of that particular object over there. I'll be explaining you in the later sessions about the reference variables. E becomes reference of an object AT, right? So in this manner we can define the copy constructor as well. I'm trying to explain you and in today's sessions what is constructor and what is the purpose of constructor. So what we get the points that constructor is a member function having same name as a class name. It invokes automatically at the time of object creation. the purpose of constructor is to initialize the private data belongs to class, and it initialize the private data belongs to initialize the copy of an object, right? It allocates the memory to an object, and then it is of three types: default, without arguments; parameterized, with arguments; and copy constructor means it will get the copy of an exist object if you required to define the copy constructor, then only, and then it will initialize the private data belongs to class. Clear? Okay. So here in this manner we have a class my class. In the my class definitions you have a public my class, integer value x equal to value, and this is called as class name, a member function with a class name called as constructor, and constructor without argument called as default constructor, constructor with argument called as parameterized constructor, right? So after that, after understanding the concept of constructor, let us go for destructor, right? So what is the name itself suggests us constructor will construct, it creates, and destructor will destroy it, right? Removes it. So constructor we are using to create, initialize the private data, create the copy of an object, and destructor is going to destroy it, right? So difference between constructor, it will construct it, and destructor is going to delete the, means constructor always have a thoughts of a construction something, and destructor always have a thoughts of a, like, means like obviously both are important, right? So if you have a like if you create the object, its purpose is solved, now you have to delete it, right? Remove it from the memory. Constructor constructs, allocates the memory, destructor deletes it from the memory over there. That is the purpose of destructor. I'll be discussing this, right? So in practically how we can define the destructor as well. So the constructor destructor, the complement of constructor is the destructor. It's just reverse of it, right? Whatever we learn about constructor, it initializes private data, it allocates the memory. The purpose is to create the object. The destructor have a different role. It deletes, it's wipe out the things from the memory, it refresh the things over there, it clean up the stuff. Okay, that is what the destroy the things. That is what the purpose of a destructor. When an object is destroyed, its destructor, if it is at 1, if you define the, just like the way you define the constructor, right? The as a creator, if you have a class definitions, you create the private data. As I said again, class is a prototype, so you have to define all this stuff. This is what the properties we needed, this is what the property we initialized, this is what the way how we can even delete the private data or delete the exist copy of an object as well, right? In C++, the destructor that handles the deactivation events. Activation event is object creation, and deactivation event means the purpose. The activation is a process of creating an object. It is a role of a constructor, and deactivations, destructions, it's a role of a destructor. The destructor has the same name as the constructor, but it has to be preceded by the tilde symbol. It's very simple. Destructor is not a parameterized one like a constructor and copy constructor, nothing. Destructor means, okay, having the same name as a class name, and it has to just like a default constructor it is, but you have to just precede with the tilde symbol. I'll be explaining this. That is what a destructor means. The difference between constructor and destructor, the same. The constructor is a special member function, whole task to initialize, the whole task is to destruct. It's have the same name as a class name. Yes, it is having the same name as a class name. Constructor like invoked and allocate the memory. It's clean up the stuffs over there. Constructor can take arguments, destructor don't take any argument, destructor don't take any arguments, and constructor is like the student integer a comma b, here tilde student, that's it. And inside that you have to write the definition of destruction, right, or deleting the things over there. So let us, if I just write over here, destructor define. So it's a till symbol and arith, and here is the deleting an object. So whenever whatever here in this case, you create the object AT, you create the object PQ, and then at the end it is going to delete whatever the memory allocated, whatever the value initialized, it will go to delete that all the stuff. Destructor will get call automatically. Constructor will get a call automatically at the time of object creation. Destructor will get a call automatically at the time of deletion. Right? Destructor don't have any parameters. Right? We are not constructing it. It is just like same as a default constructor. Just like we think in the general manner that the way we comes to in this world, the same way we go out, go like leave this world. In the sim that popular like concept we know. So in the similar manner, destructor don't have any arguments, right? You cannot define the end. It's not in the user, or it's not in the a human's hand. You cannot govern that deletions. You don't know the what is the end date of your death. I mean, so that has to be defined by the creator. So whenever like okay, the purpose is solved, it has to be clean up, right? And that is the role of a destructor over there. So destructor you have to define as a till symbol, and it works automatically whenever it want to create the it want to delete the object over there. Let us go for the execution now. Yes, we modify as a reference and all. Yeah. Let us reload again. Okay, uploading things. So we'll go here. Reload it again. Yes. Here we got a here it is. Yeah, construct one. Run it. Here is the output. Arithmetic with object this thing, and then we constructed AT and PQ, and then let us like okay, we haven't write anything else in the destructor, so you can print like cout things related objects. Okay, and it will 2 times it will be get called. Reload it again. Yes, and run it. Click here. First of all, whenever you create the object AT and then we perform all the arithmetics, then we consider object PQ by taking example of copy constructor and then deleting object created objects 2 times, means AT is deleted and the PQ also get deleted over that, right? So this is what the concept what we discussed today, that is constructor and destructor. Let us revise what we discussed up till now. Constructor is needed. Why we need it? Because if you don't write the constructor, then you have to define the member function for initializing data. So what is constructor? Constructor is the same name, is a member function having same name as a class name. It can be defined in, it is used to initialize the private data. So it can have the 3 types: the default without argument, the parameterized with arguments, and the you have a third one that is called the copy constructor, right? So whenever you create the object without passing any argument, then as we know that constructor gets a call automatically at the time of object creations. We are not supposed to give a call like a get data, at.get data. So default constructor automatically gets called and initialized with the default values. Parameterized, user will get the user can give the inputs and initialize the private data, initialize the copy of an object. And copy constructor means if you have an already exist object, then it reference will be taken. Okay, just like I given you the example of int a default constructor, int a equals to 5 parameterized constructor, and int b equals to a copy constructor, right? So this is what the way. And then we define about the destructor. What is destructor? Destructor have a reverse role, complement of constructor. Constructor constructs it, destructor destroyed it. So difference between destructor cannot be parameterized. Destructor have a whenever you define the constructor a default way, the destructor will be defined in this manner that there is a tilde symbol with the default constructor, and then you have to write the in the constructor definitions you are initializing, you are creating in the destructor definitions you have to delete everything over there, and destructor will gets call whenever the scope ends. At the end of a scope, everything what we constructed will be get deleted over there. So hope you understand these all the stuffs about the constructor and destructor, right? Thank you.